To discuss this further, we're going to bring in Jonathan Panikoff. He's the director of Scowcroft Middle East Security Initiative and intelligence expert. It's been 7 months of ongoing fighting. How do you think this is going to end, and is it going to end anytime soon?
Thanks so much for having me. Look, it's not going to end immediately. That we know for sure. Israeli considerations about a possible military operation in Rafa are probably increasing, frankly, overnight from where they even were a week or 2 weeks ago, because we saw a rocket barrage by Hamas into Israel from Rafa. So I think this is going to continue for at least a little bit. And then the reality is, the humanitarian conditions on the ground are so terrible that it's even after the conflict ends, the actual fighting ends, it's going to take probably a year and a half for individuals in Gaza to actually have all the required access to food, to water, to basic necessities, sewage, all the normal things you would think.
Yeah, describe to me exactly what the conditions are like on the ground to your best knowledge.
Yeah, look, so from the people I speak with who have been on the ground, the reality is the conditions have been deteriorating, obviously, for months. That continues. There is insufficient potable water. There remains insufficient food. There's insufficient shelter, and there's a real concern about where Gazans actually can go to be safe. Now, you have seen in the last couple of weeks, Israel move about 1 million people out of Rafah to try and ensure there is not increased death and destruction from a military operation there. But the situation on the ground remains incredibly acute. You're near famine levels, and in some cases, probably at famine levels.
It's just awful to think about, and this has been going on for 7 months, but really it's been going on for decades and even longer. The IDF, what types of hurdles are they having to jump through? Hamas using civilians as human shields, hiding under hospitals and in schools. What are some of the new challenges that they're dealing with there in Rafah?
So you nailed it correctly. For a long time now, you've had Hamas, and they've got a long history of this, hiding in plain sight and using civilians as shields and civilian institutions, just as you said, hospitals and schools. In Rafah, it's become even more challenging because you had so much of the Gazan population pushed down to Rafah to escape war conditions elsewhere in the Gaza Strip over the last 7.5 months, that it's gotten harder and harder to tell and differentiate while you have Hamas fighters in plain clothes blending in. And of course, you have a myriad of tunnels, over 300 miles of tunnels throughout the Gaza Strip, some of which was certainly in Rafah. That's the biggest challenge the Israeli army is going to face, the IDF is going to face. It's not just about how do you engage in an operation in Rafah to try to clear out Hamas. It's how do you destroy the tunnels and the mass infrastructure that's been built over the last decade and a half by the terrorist organization.
Right, and so many splinter groups, it's hard to even figure out who's leading who there in some scenarios. How much support is Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu losing because of both the war and what some would call even a lack of determination to get the hostages home?
Certainly in Israel, the criticism against the prime minister has been rising for a long time now. In fact, there was huge divisions in Israeli society before the war. It seems so long ago, but it was less than a year that the judicial crisis was hitting Israel, in which there was concern of Israel and Netanyahu changing the way the courts acted to frankly enable him to ensure that he wasn't put in jail for corruption charges. Those charges are still hanging over his head. They've become a big divisive point in Israel of many who think that he's conducting this war in a way really to elongate it and ensure that he stays in power. The hostage families are incredibly upset. You're seeing increased calls just to end the war, to get them home. But the challenges we saw from the last potential hostage deal that didn't come to fruition, it's not even clear how many hostages are alive right now, where exactly they all are, who are held by Hamas and who's held by splinter groups. And so the pressure is going to continue to increase on Prime Minister Netanyahu, but he hasn't shown any indication yet that he's willing to really change his strategy or actually go forward with a lack of a strategy.
Hey, thank you for watching. Please go to newsnationnow.com, newsnationnow.com, and you can find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button down below. Then you will get more of News Nation's fact-driven coverage.